The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with the voices of 847 different species. Some spoke through sound waves, others through light patterns, and a few communicated by releasing carefully controlled chemical signals into the air. But today, all of them were talking about the same thing. Humans at Ambassador Keth Prime of the Aquarian Federation floated in his water-filled sphere, his tentacles rippling with concern. "The reports keep coming in from Sector 7, he said, his translator converting his bioelectric pulses into standard galactic common. "These creatures are unlike anything we have catalogued." The towering insectoid representative from the Hive Collective clicked her mandibles in agreement. "Our scouts observed them for 3 rotations. Their behavior makes no sense according to any known biological patterns." At the center of the chamber, the ancient keeper of records activated the holographic display system. Images flickered to life above the assembled delegates. The first showed a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Species designation, human. Planet of origin, Earth. Sol system, outer rim territory Zeta 9, the keeper announced in its mechanical voice. Initial contact occurred 47 standard days ago, when their primitive vessels were detected crossing our monitoring boundaries. Images changed to show stocky bipedal creatures, with minimal fur covering and soft-looking skin. They walked upright on 2 legs and had forward-facing eyes like predators, but their faces showed expressions that seemed almost friendly. At first glance, they appeared to be typical carbon-based life forms, continued the keeper.
However, extended observation has revealed highly unusual behavioral patterns that warrant immediate council attention. A new image appeared showing humans inside some kind of combat arena.
But instead of fighting to the death as expected, they were following complex rules and appeared to be enjoying themselves. When one fell down, the others stopped to help them up. "They engage in ritualized combat for entertainment purposes," explained the keeper, "but they show concern for their opponent's welfare. This contradicts all known predator psychology." Delegate Zix6 from the warrior caste of Vorthon made a sound like grinding metal. "Perhaps they are prey species pretending to be predators." "Negative," replied the keeper as more images flashed by. "Observe their response to genuine threats." The hologram showed grainy footage from a mining station in the asteroid belt of their home system. A catastrophic explosion had trapped several humans deep underground. Instead of evacuating, dozens of other humans rushed toward the danger, digging with their bare hands and primitive tools. They worked for days without rest, pulling their people from the wreckage. Many of the rescuers were injured, but they kept going until everyone was safe. "They willingly entered dangerous situations to help their own kind," noted the keeper. "This alone would not be unusual. But observe their interaction with other species." The scene changed to show a human settlement on a small moon. A group of young Zephyrian traders had crash-landed nearby during a storm. The bird-like aliens were clearly injured and afraid. But instead of ignoring them or demanding payment for help, the humans immediately brought them food, medical supplies, and shelter. They spent days caring for the injured Zephyrians without asking for anything in return. The chamber fell silent, except for the usual background hum of life support systems. The humans showed no fear of the unknown species, the keeper continued. They demonstrated immediate protective instincts toward beings they had never encountered before. When the Zephyrian rescue ship arrived, the humans refused all offers of payment or trade goods. Ambassador Thex 9 of the crystalline Hexarchs flashed urgent patterns of red and orange light. "This behavior is impossible. No species develops protective responses toward unknown aliens. It violates every principle of evolutionary psychology." "Yet the evidence is clear," said the keeper. "In every recorded interaction, humans show what they call empathy toward other beings. They appear capable of understanding and sharing the emotional states of completely different life forms." More images filled the space above them. Humans teaching young alien children to play strange games involving spherical objects. Humans sharing their food with hungry travelers from other worlds. Humans risking their lives to save alien creatures they had never seen before. "But this is not the most disturbing discovery," the keeper announced. The final image showed a human settlement where dozens of different species lived together peacefully. Tall, elegant sylphs worked alongside short, sturdy dwarven miners. Gaseous ethereals shared the same spaces as solid humanoids. Children of different species played together in ways that should have been impossible. They have somehow convinced members of 17 different species to abandon their homeworlds and live in mixed communities, said the keeper. These settlements show no signs of conflict or segregation. All species appear to be thriving. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds, lights, and chemical releases as hundreds of delegates tried to speak at once. "Order!" demanded the ancient High Chancellor, her cybernetic voice cutting through the chaos. "Dr. Vex Prime of Xenobiology, present your analysis." A small gray creature with oversized eyes stepped forward. Its voice was quiet but clear. "Esteemed colleagues, after careful study of all available data, I must present a classification that has never been used in our recorded history." The chamber fell silent again. Humans must be classified as a Class 3 hazardous empathy species. They possess the unprecedented ability to form emotional bonds with any intelligent life form they encounter. They show protective instincts toward beings they have no evolutionary connection to. Most dangerously, they appear capable of convincing other species to adopt similar behavioral patterns. "What does this mean for the galaxy?" asked Ambassador Keth Prime. Dr. Vex Prime's large eyes reflected the chamber's lights as it considered the question. "If humans continue to spread throughout known space, they will fundamentally alter the social structure of every civilization they contact. Species that have maintained careful isolation for thousands of years are already requesting cultural exchange programs with human settlements. Our entire understanding of interspecies relations could collapse." High Chancellor Mordax Prime processed this information through her quantum brain matrix. "What do you recommend?" "Immediate containment protocols," Dr. Vex Prime replied without hesitation. "We must establish a quarantine zone around all human-occupied systems. No ships should be allowed in or out until we can determine how to safely interact with this species." "And if the humans refuse to accept quarantine?" asked Delegate Zix-6. "Then we may need to consider more permanent solutions," the doctor said quietly. The High Chancellor's optical sensors dimmed as she made her decision. "Motion approved. Effective immediately. All human systems are under Class 3 quarantine. Military enforcement is authorized if necessary." As the council session ended and delegates began filing out through various transport methods, none of them noticed the small probe that had been silently recording everything from a ventilation shaft. The probe's memory banks were already transmitting the data through quantum channels to a small blue planet, 30,000 light-years away. On Earth, a woman named Captain Sarah Chen finished reviewing the transmission and smiled. She turned to her team of scientists, diplomats, and explorers. "Well, folks," she said, "looks like we're about to become galactic outlaws. Better start packing. We have 847 civilizations to meet, and apparently we're running out of time." Outside her window, thousands of human ships were already beginning their journey to the stars, carrying with them the most dangerous weapon the galaxy had ever encountered: the simple desire to make friends. The emergency alarm echoed through the Galactic Council's monitoring station on Nexus Prime. Chief Observer Yilk 7 rushed to the main display screen, his 6 legs carrying him faster than usual. What he saw there made his compound eyes widen in disbelief. Red warning lights covered the galactic map like a disease spreading across healthy tissue. Each light represented a confirmed human presence outside their quarantine zone. "How many?" he asked his assistant, a nervous triloid whose skin was already turning the pale blue color of extreme stress. 342 confirmed sightings in the last rotation," squeaked the assistant. "And that's just what we've been able to verify. There could be hundreds more." Yilk 7 stared at the map in shock. The quarantine had been in place for only 60 standard days. The human systems were surrounded by the most advanced detection grids in galactic history. Their fastest ships should not have been able to cross even the outer perimeter without triggering massive alerts. Yet somehow, humans were showing up everywhere. The first report had come from the mining world of Kepler 442b. A catastrophic tunnel collapse had trapped 17 Zephyrian miners deep underground with toxic gases filling the area. The rescue operation had been abandoned after 3 attempts failed and 2 professional rescue teams were nearly killed by the poisonous fumes. Then the humans arrived. Nobody knew how they had gotten past the blockade. Nobody knew how they had even learned about the accident. But security footage showed a group of 12 humans in makeshift breathing gear diving into the toxic clouds without hesitation. They worked for 36 straight hours, using primitive tools in their bare hands to dig through collapsed rock. All 17 Zephyrians were pulled out alive. When asked why they had risked their lives for strangers, one human had simply said, "Because they needed help." The Zephyrian government tried to classify the incident, but word spread anyway. Within days, requests for human assistance were flooding communication channels across 3 star systems. The second incident occurred on the pleasure world of Nuevo Paraíso, the galaxy's most exclusive resort destination. For thousands of years, it had catered only to the wealthy elite of various species who came to enjoy carefully segregated entertainment, designed specifically for their biology. Then, humans had somehow appeared in the main plaza with strange instruments and colorful banners. Before security could stop them, they had begun producing organized sound waves that they called music. But this wasn't like the species-specific audio entertainment that each race preferred. This was something completely new. The sounds were designed to appeal to multiple hearing ranges simultaneously. The rhythms triggered positive emotional responses in both fast-metabolizing and slow-metabolizing species. Most impossibly, the humans had invited everyone to participate, regardless of their biological limitations. Within hours, beings who had never spoken to each other were moving together in synchronized patterns the humans called dancing. Crystalline hexarchs were harmonizing with gaseous ethereals. Armored vorthons were attempting to match rhythms with delicate sylphs. The resort's management tried to shut down the gathering, but their own staff had joined in. When security forces arrived, they found their commanding officers teaching human children how to play traditional Vorthan War drums. The event had lasted 6 days and became known as the first Galactic Music Festival. By the time it ended, representatives from 47 different species had exchanged contact information and begun planning similar gatherings on their homeworlds. Chief Observer, Yiluk 7, scrolled through report after report of similar incidents. Humans appearing on cargo ships where they definitely hadn't been before. Humans showing up at diplomatic meetings they shouldn't have known about. Humans arriving at disaster sites before official rescue teams could even mobilize. "Sir," his assistant interrupted nervously, "we're getting reports from the Vorthan Empire." Yiluk 7's attention snapped to the assistant. The Vorthan Empire was the galaxy's most powerful military force. Their warrior culture had dominated 3-star clusters for over 2 millennia. If anyone could handle a few wandering humans, it should be them. "What kind of reports?" "Military recruitment is down 60% across all Vorthan worlds," the assistant said, his skin now turning an alarming shade of white. "Their warrior caste is refusing combat assignments. That's impossible. Vorthans live for battle." "Not anymore, sir. Apparently, they've been talking to human military advisors who introduced them to something called proportional response and conflict resolution. Now they're insisting on trying negotiations before engaging in warfare." Yiluk 7 felt dizzy. The Vorthans were genetically programmed for aggression. Their entire society was built around conquest and domination. The idea that they could be convinced to try talking instead of fighting was like suggesting that stars could be taught to shine backwards. "There's more, sir," the assistant continued. "The Ethereal Collective is reporting similar problems. Their meditation retreats have been infiltrated by humans teaching something called group therapy. Now their citizens are expressing individual opinions instead of maintaining collective consciousness." The reports kept coming. The isolationist hermit worlds were hosting their first interspecies cultural exchange programs. The merchant guilds were implementing fair trade practices and worker safety standards. Even the ancient archive keepers were sharing their most protected knowledge with anyone who asked politely. Everywhere humans went, fundamental social structures were changing. Species that had maintained the same governmental systems for thousands of years were suddenly experimenting with concepts like democracy and individual rights. Civilizations that had never questioned their traditional hierarchies were beginning to ask dangerous questions about equality and justice. "How are they doing this?" Yiluk 7 muttered to himself. "How are they getting past our defenses?" As if in answer to his question, a new alert flashed on his screen. A human transmission had been detected coming from inside the Nexus Prime station itself. With trembling hands, Yiluk 7 activated the communication channel. A human face appeared on the screen, young, female, with a characteristic forward-facing eyes and strange facial expression that seemed friendly, despite belonging to what was clearly a predator species. "Hi there," the human said cheerfully. My name is Lieutenant Jessica Torres. I've been living in Maintenance Section C7 for the past 3 weeks. Your coffee machine makes terrible coffee, but I figured out how to fix it. Also, I noticed that your air recycling system could use some improvements. I have some ideas if you're interested. Yilk 7 stared at the screen in horror. How did you get aboard this station? Oh, that's easy, Jessica replied. I asked nicely. Your security chief, Commander Crix Prime, is actually really lonely. He's been stuck on this station for 8 years without seeing his family. We had a long talk about it over dinner. Did you know he writes poetry? It's actually quite good. Before Yilk 7 could respond, Commander Crix Prime himself entered the observation center. The normally stern Vorthon warrior was carrying a tray with 3 cups of steaming liquid and what appeared to be small baked goods. Chief Observer, Crix Prime said formally, Lieutenant Torres has prepared fresh coffee and cookies. She says it's a human tradition called friendship. I thought you might like to try some. Yilk 7 looked at his security commander, then at the human on the screen, then at the offered refreshments. In that moment he realized the truth that the Galactic Council had failed to understand. This wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a conquest. It wasn't even intentional colonization. The humans were simply being themselves, and somehow, that was the most irresistible force the galaxy had ever encountered. As he accepted the cup of coffee and took his first sip of the strange but pleasant beverage, Chief Observer Yilk 7 made a note in his official log. Quarantine procedures have failed. Human contamination is spreading exponentially through social contact, rather than military action. Recommend immediate council emergency session. But even as he wrote the words, he found himself wondering if Lieutenant Torres might have any other suggestions for improving station operations. After all, she had been very helpful so far, and the cookies were actually quite delicious. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 847 different species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of panic, outrage, and confusion that the translation system struggled to process. High Chancellor Mordax Prime activated her emergency authority protocols, sending a pulse of electromagnetic energy through the chamber that demanded silence. The cybernetic implants in her skull glowed red as she accessed the most urgent. Reports from across the galaxy. Urgence. Session 7329 is now in session. Her amplified voice echoed through the chamber. We are here to address the unprecedented crisis caused by human infiltration of galactic civilization. A 3-dimensional holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the current galactic situation. Red zones marked confirmed human presence, yellow indicated suspected activity, and green showed areas still under normal council control. There was very little green left on the map. Ambassador Thex 9 of the HFY rose from his crystal platform, his entire body flashing urgent orange patterns. Honored colleagues, in the 60 standard days since we established the quarantine, the situation has deteriorated beyond all possible projections. We are facing nothing less than the complete transformation of galactic society. The hologram zoomed in on the HFY home system. My own people, who have maintained perfect crystalline harmony for 12,000 years, are now experiencing something they call individual creativity. Our youth are creating what humans term art, instead of focusing on mathematical perfection. They claim they want to express themselves. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. The HFYs were known throughout the galaxy for their absolute conformity and logical precision. The idea of them engaging in unpredictable creative activities was as disturbing as it was impossible. The situation is even worse in the Vorthon Empire, declared General Crack 7, his armored bulk dominating the military section. Our warrior academies are in complete chaos. Cadets are refusing to participate in combat training. They say they have learned about something called conflict resolution from human advisors. He activated his own display, showing footage from Vorthon military bases. Where once there had been disciplined formations of warriors practicing battle techniques, there were now circles of soldiers sitting on the ground, talking quietly and sharing what appeared to be food. They call it group discussion. General Crack 7 continued, his voice heavy with disbelief. Instead of settling disputes through honorable combat, they want to talk about their feelings and find mutually beneficial solutions. Our entire military structure is collapsing. Ambassador Sil Prime of the Ethereal Collective drifted forward, her gaseous form shimmering with distressed patterns. The contamination affects even energy-based life forms. Our collective consciousness, maintained for 8 millennia, is fragmenting. Individual ethereals are developing what they call personal opinions and insisting on being addressed by individual names rather than collective designations. The evidence continued to pile up. The reclusive archive keepers were sharing their most protected knowledge with anyone who asked politely, claiming that information wants to be free. The merchant guilds had begun implementing fair trade practices that prioritized worker welfare over maximum profit. Even the ancient philosopher kings were questioning their traditional authority, asking their subjects what they actually wanted instead of simply decreeing what was best for them. Dr. Vex Prime of Xenobiology requested permission to present his analysis. The small scientist's large eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he accessed his research data. Esteemed colleagues, I have identified the mechanism by which humans achieve this unprecedented social transformation, he announced. They do not conquer through force or manipulation. They simply demonstrate alternative ways of thinking and behaving. When other species observe humans showing kindness to strangers, expressing individual creativity, or resolving conflicts through communication, they begin to wonder if they might try similar approaches. He paused to let this information sink in before continuing. Most dangerously, humans seem to genuinely enjoy the company of other species. They show authentic interest in alien cultures, languages, and ways of life. They ask questions not to gather intelligence, but simply because they are curious. They offer help not for strategic advantage, but because they believe it is the right thing to do. But surely this behavior must serve some hidden purpose, insisted Ambassador Keth Prime of the Aquarian Federation. No species can have evolved such seemingly altruistic traits without some evolutionary advantage. Dr. Vex Prime's expression grew even more troubled. That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human psychology. Analysis of their evolutionary history shows that their empathy and cooperation instincts developed as survival mechanisms on their dangerous homeworld. But they have generalized these instincts to apply to all intelligent life, even species they could never have encountered during their evolution. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. They cannot help themselves, Dr. Vex Prime concluded. Humans are biologically programmed to form emotional bonds with other intelligent beings. They will continue to spread these behaviors wherever they go, not as a conquest strategy, but simply because it is their nature. High Chancellor Mordax Prime processed thousands of additional reports through her quantum consciousness. Every star system told the same story. Wherever humans appeared, the fundamental assumptions that had governed galactic civilization for millions of years began to crumble. The question before us is simple, she announced. Do we take decisive action to preserve our existing social order, or do we allow human influence to continue spreading throughout the galaxy? The debate that followed lasted for 18 standard hours. Some delegates argued that human influence might be beneficial in the long term, pointing to reduced conflicts and increased cooperation in affected areas. Others insisted that such rapid social change was inherently dangerous and could lead to the collapse of stable civilizations. But the majority were simply afraid. The galaxy they had known for millennia was disappearing, replaced by something unpredictable and strange. Even if the changes might ultimately be positive, the uncertainty was terrifying to species that had maintained the same social structures for thousands of years. Ambassador Thex 9 called for the final vote. The motion before this council is to officially ban all human contact with galactic civilization and authorize whatever military force is necessary to enforce this prohibition. All in favor? Across the chamber, representatives activated their voting systems. Lights flashed, energy patterns shifted, and chemical signals filled the air as each species registered their decision. 734 votes in favor, announced the High Chancellor. 113 opposed. The motion passes. The timestamp on the official record showed 1542 Galactic Standard Time. Effective immediately, humans are banned from all contact with members of galactic civilization. High Chancellor Mordax Prime declared, military enforcement is authorized to begin within one standard rotation. As the delegates began filing out of the chamber, many felt a sense of relief that decisive action had finally been taken. The human problem would be solved through superior technology and overwhelming force, just like every other threat the galaxy had ever faced. They had no way of knowing that at 1543 Galactic Standard Time, exactly 1 minute after their vote, their entire strategy would be revealed as completely useless. The humans, it seemed, had been planning ahead, and they had learned one very important thing during their brief time in galactic society. The best way to solve a problem was not to fight it, but to make it irrelevant in 60 seconds. 847 different worlds would receive simultaneous transmissions that would change everything. The vote was over. But the real surprise was just beginning. At 1543 Galactic Standard Time, exactly 1 minute after the historic vote, every communication system in the Galactic Council chamber began screaming with incoming transmissions. High Chancellor Mordax Prime was still processing the legal implications of the ban when her personal communication array lit up like a supernova. Thousands of priority signals were flooding in simultaneously from every corner of the galaxy. "What is happening?" she demanded, her cybernetic implants struggling to handle the massive data influx. Her aide, a nervous triloid whose skin had turned completely white with shock, was frantically trying to organize the incoming messages. "Chancellor, we're receiving transmissions from every member world simultaneously. They're all from humans." The massive holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered and resolved into a grid showing hundreds of human faces. Men, women, children, elderly individuals, all smiling and waving at the assembled delegates who had just voted to ban them. "Hi there," said a cheerful human voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We heard about your vote just now. We wanted to introduce ourselves properly." Ambassador Thex9's crystal form flashed panicked red patterns. "This is impossible. How are they accessing our secure communication networks?" As if in answer to his question, one section of the display zoomed in on a familiar human face. It was Captain Sarah Chen, the same woman whose probe had been detected during the original council session months ago. "Oh, that's easy to explain," she said with a warm smile. "We've been learning about galactic technology from our friends across the galaxy. Did you know that your communication systems are actually quite similar to our internet protocols? Once you understand the basic principles, it's not too hard to connect." Another human voice joined in from a different section of the display. "Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Rodriguez calling from the Hexarch homeworld. My neighbors here taught me how to work with crystalline computing systems. It's fascinating how mathematics can be expressed through light patterns." The camera pulled back to show Dr. Rodriguez standing in what was clearly a Hexarch residential area, surrounded by several crystalline beings who were also waving at the screen. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Thex9. "No alien has ever been permitted in our residential zones. Actually," said one of the Hexarchs in the transmission. His light patterns translated into Galactic Common. "Michael has been living next door for 37 rotations. He brings excellent baked goods to our neighborhood mathematics meetings. His daughter Sophia is the top student in our junior crystalline harmony class." More sections of the display activated. A human calling herself Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh was transmitting from what appeared to be a Vorthan military base, where she was helping armored warriors prepare something that looked like a large meal. "We're making pizza for tonight's peace treaty celebration," she explained cheerfully. "General Crack Prime here has developed quite a talent for cooking. Who knew Vorthans made such excellent chefs when they're not busy conquering things?" General Crack 7 in the council chamber turned to stare at the screen in horror. "That's my home base. That's my personal quarters. How did she get into my personal quarters?" On the screen, a large Vorthan warrior appeared next to Lieutenant Walsh. Despite his fearsome appearance, he was wearing what appeared to be a cooking apron and had flour on his armored hands. "Jennifer is my daughter friend," the warrior explained, using a Vorthan term that had never been applied to aliens before. "She taught me that food sharing creates stronger bonds than battle victory. We have been family unit for many rotations." The revelations continued at a breathtaking pace. Humans were calling in from ethereal meditation centers, where they had apparently learned to partially phase into energy states. From Aquarian underwater cities, where they were using advanced breathing apparatus to live alongside the tentacled delegates. From the archive worlds, where they were helping ancient librarians digitize historical records while learning about galactic history. "This cannot be happening," muttered Dr. Vex Prime, his large eyes darting frantically between different transmission sources. "Our intelligence networks would have detected large-scale human infiltration. We have monitoring systems on every world. A new human face appeared on the display, an elderly woman with gray hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Oh, hello there. I'm Dorothy Chen, Sarah's grandmother. I've been living on the monitoring station orbiting Nexus Prime for the past 4 months. The staff there is just lovely. Chief Observer Yilux 7 has been teaching me to play 3-dimensional chess, and I've been showing everyone how to knit sweaters. Chief Observer Yilux 7's 6 legs nearly gave out beneath him. Dorothy, you told me you were a maintenance supervisor from the Inner Rim. Well, I'm retired from maintenance work, Dorothy replied with a gentle smile. I just didn't mention that I was retired from Earth maintenance work. You never asked. And you looked so lonely working those long shifts. I thought you could use some company and home-cooked meals. The scope of the situation was becoming clear with each new transmission. Humans weren't just visiting alien worlds. They had been living there for months, integrated into local communities, forming relationships, and becoming part of families. Captain Sarah Chen's face reappeared in the center of the display. I know this might come as a surprise, she said, but while you've been debating what to do about us, we've been doing what humans do best. We've been making friends. The display split into hundreds of smaller windows, each showing humans living and working alongside different alien species. Human children playing with young Zephyrians in aerial games designed for wings they didn't have. Human artists collaborating with sylph musicians to create hybrid art forms. Human engineers working with dwarven miners to improve safety systems in deep space excavations. We didn't come to your worlds as invaders or colonizers, Sarah continued. We came as neighbors. We brought cookies and asked about your day. We offered to help with your problems and shared our own stories. We learned your languages and taught you ours. She paused and her expression grew more serious. Most importantly, we asked your children what their dreams were, and we told them that their dreams mattered. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives tried to contact their home worlds, demanding explanations for how humans had infiltrated their most secure locations. But the answers that came back were always the same. They were so helpful. They fixed our broken systems. They taught our children new games. They brought food when our neighbors were sick. They listened to our problems and offered solutions. They made us laugh. Ambassador Keith Primes' tentacles writhed in distress as he received a transmission from his own home city. My youngest spawn group has apparently formed something called a pen-pal relationship with human children from 7 different worlds. They've been sharing drawings and stories for 43 rotations. The situation is the same everywhere, reported High Chancellor Mordax Prime as she processed data from across the galaxy. Humans have established permanent residences in 847 star systems, 1 settlement in each council member's territory. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. This hadn't been random exploration or opportunistic settlement. The humans had deliberately and systematically placed communities within every single council member's space. They've been studying us, realized Dr. Vex Prime. Learning our languages, our customs, our children's interests. This was planned from the beginning. Sarah Chen nodded from the display. We wanted to understand you before we introduced ourselves formally. We learned about your cultures, your histories, your hopes and fears. We discovered that despite all your biological differences, you're not so different from us in the ways that really matter. She gestured to something off-screen, and the camera pulled back to show her standing in a vast area filled with beings from dozens of different species, all working together on various projects. You all want your children to be safe and happy. You want to feel like your lives have meaning. You want to be understood and accepted for who you are. You want to help others when you can, and you want others to help you when you need it. The camera panned across the diverse crowd, showing humans and aliens collaborating, laughing, and sharing meals together. We're not asking you to change your laws or your governments, Sarah said as the camera returned to her face. We're not demanding anything from you. We're just here, as your neighbors hoping to be part of your communities. We brought cookies and asked about your day. She smiled, that characteristic human expression that somehow conveyed warmth and friendship across species barriers. We're family now, and family doesn't abandon family no matter what the paperwork says. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council chamber in stunned silence. High Chancellor Mordax Prime stared at the now empty display, processing the full magnitude of what had just occurred. The humans hadn't just bypassed their quarantine, they had made it irrelevant. You cannot quarantine beings who are already living in your neighbor's house, teaching your children to play new games, and helping your elderly relatives with their daily tasks. The ban had passed at 1542. At 1543, it had become meaningless. The humans were already home. 6 months after the failed vote to ban humans, the building that had once housed the Galactic Council's formal assembly chamber had been completely transformed. Gone were the rigid, hierarchical seating arrangements and intimidating ceremonial decorations. Instead, comfortable furniture was arranged in friendly circles throughout the space, with low tables covered in snacks and beverages from dozens of different worlds. A hand-painted sign near the entrance read, "Galactic Community Center, all welcome," in 47 different languages and 3 mathematical notation systems. Former High Chancellor Mordax Prime, who now insisted everyone call her Mordax or Morty for short, was setting up folding chairs for the evening's community meeting. Her cybernetic implants had been modified to display cheerful emoji-style expressions instead of the stern official symbols she had once used. "Has anyone seen the coffee machine?" she called out to the mixed group of humans and aliens who were helping prepare for the weekly potluck dinner. "Dorothy borrowed it for the children's baking class," replied Chief Observer Yilex 7, who was carefully arranging alien flower arrangements that the local gardening club had made. "She's teaching the young Hexarchs how to make chocolate chip cookies." Yilex 7 had adapted remarkably well to the new social order. His official title was now Community Activities Coordinator, and he wore a hand-knitted sweater that Dorothy Chen had made for him. The sweater had 6 sleeves to accommodate his multiple arms and was decorated with cheerful patterns that spelled out Universe's best organizer in Galactic Common. The baking class is running late because little Christex Prime wanted to understand the mathematical principles behind cookie dough. "Consistency," added Dr. Vex Prime, who had become the community center's unofficial childcare coordinator. "You know how Hexarch children are about their calculations?" Through the large windows that had replaced the chamber's former walls, they could see the current session of the Interspecies Youth Soccer League taking place on the lawn outside. Young beings from a dozen different worlds were running around chasing a ball, their various forms of locomotion creating a chaotic but joyful scene. A small Vorthan child was being gently coached by a human teenager on the proper way to kick without using her natural combat instincts. An ethereal youth had learned to maintain a semi-solid form long enough to participate, while a young Zephyrian was practicing flying low enough to avoid being offside. "The Vorthan Warriors Academy called again," announced former Ambassador Thex 9, whose crystal form now displayed a cheerful blue glow, instead of the formal amber patterns he had once used. "They want to know if General Crack Prime can teach their advanced classes about tactical food preparation and strategic relationship building." Everyone in the room chuckled. General Crack Prime's transformation from fierce warrior to community chef had become legendary throughout the galaxy. His cookbook, Cooking for Peace, A Vorthan's Guide to Diplomatic Dining, was already in its 3rd printing and had been translated into over 200 languages. "I'll let him know after his meditation session with the Ethereals," replied Lieutenant Jennifer Walsh, who was now serving as the liaison between the former military forces and the community center's conflict resolution programs. "He's been working on achieving inner harmony before tonight's peace treaty celebration." The peace treaty celebration had become a monthly tradition. Every 30 days, the community center hosted a galaxy-wide party to celebrate another successful month of various species not being at war with each other. It had started as a joke, but when conflicts between different civilizations had dropped to their lowest levels in recorded galactic history, people began taking it seriously. "Speaking of celebrations," said Captain Sarah Chen as she entered the main room carrying a large covered dish, "the Hermit Worlds just sent their first cultural exchange delegation. They'll be arriving tomorrow for the Introduction to Friendship workshop." This announcement caused excited murmurs throughout the room. The Hermit Worlds had maintained complete isolation for over 3,000 years, refusing all contact with galactic civilization. The fact that they were voluntarily sending representatives was being hailed as a diplomatic miracle. "Did they specify any special accommodation needs?" asked Dorothy Chen, who had somehow become the community center's unofficial hospitality coordinator. Despite being technically retired, they requested a quiet room with dim lighting and asked if we could please not hug them unless they specifically Request physical contact, Sarah replied. Also, they've never seen ice cream before and are very curious about it. I'll ask the Aquarian delegation to prepare some of their frozen algae desserts, suggested former Ambassador Keth Prime, whose water-filled mobility sphere now had decorative stickers applied by various children who had befriended him. It's similar to ice cream, but more familiar to beings who prefer cold environments. The conversations continued as more community members arrived for the evening meeting. What would have once been a formal diplomatic session had evolved into something that resembled a neighborhood block party more than an interstellar governing body. The agenda for tonight's meeting included updates on the galaxy-wide literacy program, teaching various species to read each other's languages, the interspecies housing exchange project, allowing families to experience life on different worlds, and the ongoing Great Galactic Recipe Exchange that had resulted in several new forms of cuisine that could be enjoyed by multiple species simultaneously. Oh, before I forget, announced Dr. Vex Prime, the archive keepers want to establish a new research project. They're calling it the Encyclopedia of Friendship, and they want to document every known method of social bonding across all galactic civilizations. That sounds wonderful, said Mordax, her display screen showing happy face symbols. Do they need any volunteers? Actually, they specifically requested human children as research assistants, Dr. Vex Prime replied with what passed for a smile on his species. Apparently, children are the galaxy's leading experts on making friends with anyone, regardless of biological differences. As if summoned by the mention of children, the soccer game outside concluded, and a mixed group of young beings came streaming into the community center. They were laughing and chattering in a mixture of languages, their faces, and other facial structures, showing the universal expression of happiness that transcends species barriers. Little Christex Prime, a young Hexarch whose crystalline form was still small enough to be carried, came running up to former Ambassador Thex9 with her arms outstretched. Uncle Thex, Uncle Thex, she called out in perfect galactic common with just a hint of a human accent. I made you cookies. Tommy showed me how to make them shaped like mathematics symbols. Thex9's entire form lit up with warm golden light as he carefully picked up the small child. 6 months ago, the idea of a Hexarch calling an adult uncle would have been incomprehensible. Their species had never developed family terminology for non-biological relationships. Now it seemed as natural as starlight. Thank you, little one, he said, his translation matrix making his voice sound appropriately delighted. Did you remember to carry the remainder in your calculations? Yes, and I divided the love equally among all the ingredients just like Grandma Dorothy taught me. Across the room, Dorothy Chen beamed with pride as she watched the interaction. At 83 years old, she had somehow become the unofficial grandmother to dozens of alien children across multiple star systems. Her weekly video calls with young beings throughout the galaxy had become so popular that several worlds had established Grandma Dorothy Appreciation Days. As the evening meeting began, the community center filled with the warm sounds of different species sharing their experiences, making plans for joint projects and solving problems together. What had once been the cold, formal chamber of galactic governance had become a place where families came together to decide how to make their shared neighborhood a better place for everyone. The memorial plaque by the entrance told the story in simple words. The Galactic Council banned humans on standard date 2387-156, but by then, they were already home. But the real story was being written every day in the laughter of children who had learned that friendship recognizes no boundaries, in the cooperation of former enemies who had discovered they shared common dreams, and in the simple miracle of beings from across the galaxy sitting together around a table, sharing food and stories in the quiet joy of knowing they were no longer alone in the universe. Outside the community center, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had been forever changed by the most powerful force known to any civilization. The simple human desire to make friends with everyone they met. And in living rooms and community centers across 847 different worlds, the revolution of kindness continued. One shared meal and one new friendship at a time. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had adopted it, and the galaxy, it turned out, had been waiting to be adopted all along.